Welcome to today's devotional message under the banner of Trusting God Always. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You sit by the window again. The world outside moves on, a blur of motion and purpose. But you feel utterly stuck, suspended in a quiet, heavy pause. The rain taps against the glass, a rhythm that echoes the slow, steady beat of your own heart, filled with a longing that feels unheard. You have done everything you thought you were supposed to do. You've prayed the prayers, whispered them in the early morning light, shouted them into the empty room at midnight, poured out your heart until there were no words left, just a raw, aching silence within you. And still, the silence from heaven feels deafening. Maybe you expected a dramatic sign, a burning bush moment, a clear, unmistakable voice cutting through the uncertainty, a sudden, decisive turn of events that would fix everything, immediately. You pictured a storm parting instantly, a mountain moving at a single command. Instead, there is this waiting, long, drawn-out season where answers seem perpetually delayed, doors remain stubbornly closed, bolted shut against your most earnest knocking, and the path forward is shrouded in mist, impossible to discern beyond the next hesitant step. Doubt, like a cold shadow, begins to creep in, wrapping itself around your fragile hope. A whisper starts in the quiet places of your mind. Does God hear you? The thought itself feels like a betrayal of your faith, yet it persists. Does He see the ache in your chest, the fear coiling like a serpent in your stomach, the tears you tried desperately to hide from the world, sometimes even from yourself? Has He forgotten you amidst the noise and clamor of a busy, suffering world? You look around and see others stepping into their breakthroughs, their prayers answered in ways that seem effortless, their paths made straight and clear. Their ships come sailing in while yours feels stuck in a becalmed sea, sails hanging limp, and a quiet, painful question forms in your heart. Why not me? It's the raw, vulnerable place many of us know intimately, the wilderness of waiting, where faith is tested not by raging storms that demand immediate, dramatic intervention, but by the slow, subtle erosion of hope in the unrelenting quiet. This isn't just about receiving a desired outcome. It's about the deep human need to feel seen, heard, and loved by the God who promises repeatedly in His Word to never leave us nor forsake us. You feel the friction, the almost unbearable tension between the vibrant promises you read in the Bible of provision, of guidance, of nearness, and the stark, silent reality you are currently living. It feels like standing at the edge of a river, hearing its rush in the distance, but seeing only dry, cracked earth at your feet. But what if this season of silence, this prolonged waiting, isn't a sign of God's absence, but a profound, even sacred invitation? What if the waiting isn't a void, empty and purposeless, but a crucible, a refining fire in the quiet, where something essential, something of eternal value, is being forged within you? What if God is not silent because He is absent, but because He is present in a way that requires your stillness to perceive? Perhaps the greatest test of faith isn't whether you believe God can move mountains, but whether you believe He is good and present, even when the mountain remains exactly where it is, formidable and unyielding. This message is for you, precisely because you find yourself in the pause, wrestling with the quiet. It's a journey into the heart of what it truly means to trust God's timing, His purpose, and His unwavering love, even when every part of you aches for Him to move, right now. And the only sound you hear is the tapping of the rain or the beat of your own waiting heart. You've sent your earnest requests heavenward, believing, hoping, sometimes pleading. Each day that passes without a visible answer adds another layer to the weight you carry. It feels like standing before a closed door, knocking gently at first, then more urgently, finally pounding, only to be met with silence. This isn't about impatience. It's about the heart's cry for God to intervene, to make known His will, to bring relief. Maybe it's the job application that vanished into the digital void, leaving you questioning your path. Perhaps it's the health crisis that lingers despite every plea, casting a long shadow over daily life. Or maybe it's the relationship that fractured, resisting every attempt at healing, leaving a gaping wound. It could be the dream, planted deep within your soul, that remains just out of reach, a constant whisper of what could be, met only by the deafening sound of delay. The silence in response to our deepest prayers can feel like rejection, fueling doubts about our worthiness or God's power. You wonder, did He even hear me? The unanswered prayer, but what if the silence is part of the answer? What if God is doing a work in the quiet that no words or immediate action could accomplish? What if He is shaping you, strengthening you, refining your dependence on Him, precisely through the absence of what you crave? He promises in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 12, that when you call on Him and come and pray to Him, He will listen. Your voice is heard, beloved soul, even when the response is not what you expect. The insight here is profound. God's listening ear doesn't guarantee immediate fulfillment of our timeline, but it guarantees His presence and attention in the wait. Remember, He is a God who delays not out of indifference, but often out of divine wisdom and perfect love. The silence feels like distance, but it might be the closest God has ever been, preparing the ground of your heart for a future harvest you cannot yet see. This is the gentle paradox of prayer. Sometimes the most profound answers arrive disguised as nothingness, challenging us to seek His hand not in the outcome, but in the stillness of His presence. Can you trust that even in the silence, God is actively engaged with your prayer, weaving it into a larger, perfect plan you cannot yet fully comprehend? Can you believe that He is the author, and even the blank pages are part of the story He is writing? Your task isn't to break the silence, but to listen within it for the quiet work of His grace. You stand before a path you desperately want to take, a door you believe is meant for you, perhaps one you've seen others walk through effortlessly. The ache in your chest is a familiar visitor now. You've done everything you know to do, prepared meticulously, prayed until the words felt thin, stepped out in faith despite the fear, yet the door remains unyielding. It's the career opportunity that vanished, the desired outcome that simply didn't materialize, the clear direction you begged for that never appeared on the horizon. It feels like hitting a solid wall, the frustration mounting with each failed attempt to push, to pry, to somehow force the way open. Doubt whispers, soft but persistent. Did He hear? Did you miss something? Is this it? just closed? The waiting feels less like a pause and more like a punishment. But look closer at that unyielding wood, at the frame that holds it firm. Sometimes a closed door isn't God saying no, but not yet. Or perhaps even more profound, this isn't the way I have for you at all. Consider the Israelites fleeing Egypt, desperate for freedom. They didn't face a slightly difficult river or a manageable mountain. They stood before an impassable Red Sea, a barrier so absolute it seemed like God Himself had led them into a trap. It was a door slammed shut by nature itself, by geography, by circumstance. Yet, that seemingly impossible barrier became the very stage for God's most dramatic, undeniable deliverance. He didn't open a side path or build a boat. He parted the impossible, making a highway where only water existed moments before. Your closed door might feel like an ending, but it could be His divine protection from a path not meant for your spirit, a preparation season for a better, richer one you can't yet see, or a necessary detour to build the kind of unshakable trust in His guidance that only wilderness journeys can forge. Trusting God's timing means accepting that His navigation system sees the whole map, the pitfalls ahead, the hidden springs, the ultimate destination. While you only see the immediate, frustrating roadblock, His delays aren't denials. They are often redirections or refinements. Sometimes, the greatest freedom isn't in the door that opens, but in the one that stays shut, shielding you from unseen dangers or misaligned destinations. How can you look at that closed door, not as a sign of rejection, but as a potential marker in God's perfect plan? Your call to reflection in this quiet moment before the silent door is this: how can you surrender your preferred path, the one you desperately envisioned, to God's sovereign guidance, trusting that His detours, His delays, and yes, His closed doors are ultimately leading you to a destination perfectly aligned with His perfect will for you? I am the Lord who makes a way in the sea, a path in the mighty waters. Isaiah 43:16. He made a path through the Red Sea. He can make a way for you, even if it's not the way you expected, or through the door you thought was your own. The quiet settles like dust in an empty room. You've been waiting for relief, for clarity, for the storm to pass. But instead of fading, the struggle intensifies. The silence isn't peace. It's a vast, echoing space where the whispers begin. They start softly, insidious questions weaving through the stillness. Is God really good? You look at the hardship, the lack of change, and the question sharpens. Is He powerful enough to handle this? The mountain in front of you looms large, and the faith that once moved pebbles feels insufficient. Does He even care about my small, hidden life? The vastness of His universe makes your personal pain feel insignificant. This internal dialogue is relentless. It gnaws. You feel a pang of guilt, a sense of failure for entertaining these thoughts. Shouldn't faith be stronger than this? Yet the fear feels real, and the visible evidence seems to contradict the promises you hold dear. It's a battle fought not on a mountaintop, but in the quiet valley of your own heart. Consider the journey of Elijah, fresh off a miraculous showdown on Mount Carmel, a display of God's blazing power that silenced prophets of Baal. You'd think faith would be invincible after that, right? Yet a threat from a vengeful queen sends him fleeing into the wilderness. In that desolate quiet, he collapses, asking God to take his life. 1 Kings 19. He felt utterly alone, forgotten, questioning God's presence despite just witnessing his fiery power. His story is a mirror, showing that questioning, doubting, feeling abandoned in the face of overwhelming circumstances is not a sign of failure. It is part of the raw, often messy landscape of human faith. This is the profound truth. God is not intimidated by your questions. He is not offended by your doubts, whispered or shouted. He doesn't demand you pretend to have it all together. Instead, he invites you to bring every single one of them to him. Pour them out, raw and unfiltered. He meets you not in your performance of faith, but in your vulnerability. The silence you fear might be the very space where his quiet, steady presence becomes the answer that finally stills the clamor of fear. The greatest strength is sometimes found in the deepest surrender of your weakness. Can you, just for a moment, stop wrestling alone? Can you vulnerably pour out the doubts that whisper in the quiet, allowing his stillness to speak louder than the noise? He doesn't promise the absence of trouble, but he promises himself in the trouble. He is a very present help in trouble. Psalm 46:1. He is closer than the whispers, waiting in the quiet to be your peace. You sit in the silence of the waiting, the days blurring together, each one feeling much like the last. The ground outside your window looks exactly the same as it did yesterday, last week, last month. You've prayed the same prayer, wrestled the same fear, felt the same stillness. It's like watching bare earth, waiting for a seed to sprout, but seeing no crack in the surface, no hint of green. The silence isn't just around you. Sometimes it feels like it's inside you too. Whispering doubts. Is anything happening? Did God even hear? Am I forgotten here in this barren stretch of time? This is where faith feels most stretched, in the long, quiet season when the spiritual landscape appears utterly unchanging, outwardly unproductive. But what if the most profound work isn't meant for your eyes right now? Imagine that seed buried deep in the earth. From above, stillness, silence, nothing. From below, the furious, quiet miracle is unfolding. The shell is cracking, not breaking under pressure, but yielding to life within. Tiny roots are reaching down, not grasping blindly, but drawn by an unseen pull towards life-giving nourishment. A fragile sprout is pushing upwards through the soil, orienting itself towards a light it cannot yet see or feel. Beneath the surface, the unseen work is intense, foundational, absolutely necessary for anything visible to ever emerge. This is often the nature of God's activity in your seasons of waiting. The waiting isn't empty space, a void where God is absent. It is a sacred, hidden workshop. He is strengthening your roots, the invisible anchors of your character, your resilience, your core trust in Him. He is refining your faith, not by making things easy, but by inviting you to believe without seeing, to hold fast when the evidence is buried deep. He might be rearranging the very soil around you, orchestrating circumstances you're completely unaware of, preparing connections you can't foresee, moving people, aligning heavenly resources for the season of visible growth that is surely coming. The stillness above ground doesn't mean inactivity below. God is meticulously, lovingly at work in the hidden places of your heart and your circumstances, preparing you and your situation for the unfolding of His perfect plan. The spiritual insight is this: God is always working. His activity isn't limited to the moments you can perceive or the progress you can measure with your human eyes. The waiting is fertile ground precisely because it forces your dependence away from what you see and onto the unwavering faithfulness of the one who works unseen. In the dark earth of your doubt and discouragement, it's like learning to walk by faith, not by sight, not on level ground, but finding steady footing in the deep, rich soil of the unseen. This is the quiet, powerful confidence the Apostle Paul speaks of when he writes, "Being confident of this, that he who began a good work in you will carry it on to completion until the day of Christ Jesus." Philippians 1:6, "He began it, and he will finish it." The gap between beginning and completion isn't abandonment or delay. It's the essential, unseen journey of growth. Can you find rest in that assurance today? Can you trust, truly trust, that even when the ground of your life seems unchanging and silent, God is faithfully at work beneath the surface? He is tending the seed of faith He planted within you, strengthening its roots, preparing the soil, ensuring that when the time is right, the sprout will break through, strong and ready for the light He has prepared. The waiting is not a pause in His plan. It is the powerful, hidden preparation for the visible glory that is to come. Surrender the need to see and lean into the quiet certainty that the one who began a good work in you is diligently, lovingly carrying it on to completion, underground and unseen, until His perfect season arrives. You sit with the frustration like a heavy coat. You've put in the work, you've poured out the prayer, and yet the visible results, the reach you envisioned, remain elusive. The silence of the waiting feels less like peace and more like being stuck. In a world that celebrates swift victories and outward achievement, this season of delay feels counterintuitive, even punishing. You crave the breakthrough, the moment where everyone sees the fruit of your labor, the answer to your prayer. You want to soar, you want to run, you want the quick growth, the visible progress. But God, the master gardener of your soul, has a different blueprint for this moment. He's not always focused on the outward reach that you or the world can see. Often, in the quiet, unyielding soil of the waiting, He is prioritizing something far more vital, far more resilient: the roots. He is using this very season you find so challenging to build depth you didn't know you needed. The long delays aren't just delays. They are opportunities to dig deeper into the truth of who He is. The need for patience isn't a test of your tolerance. It's an invitation to lean less on your own dwindling strength and more on His inexhaustible supply. Think of a mighty oak tree. Its power isn't just in its sprawling branches or the shade it provides, its reach. Its true strength lies hidden beneath the earth, in a complex network of roots that anchor it against the fiercest storms. Without those deep roots, the tallest tree is easily toppled. This waiting, this seemingly unproductive season, is God cultivating your spiritual root system. It's where perseverance is quietly forged, not in the spotlight of success, but in the shadow of delay. It's where true dependence is learned, not in having everything you need instantly, but in the daily recognition that you need Him for everything. It refines your character, chipping away at impatience and self-reliance, shaping you in ways that immediate gratification never could. There's a gentle paradox here. Sometimes, the greatest progress is made when you feel you're standing still. The spiritual insight is profound. God uses the waiting not merely to prepare the blessing He has for you, but to prepare you for the blessing. He is building within you the endurance that Scripture says produces character, and that character, in turn, produces a hope that will not disappoint. It's in this quiet, root-building season that the ancient promise whispers back to life. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Hope in Him is the water that nourishes the hidden roots. Take a quiet moment now. Look honestly at this season of waiting you are in. Can you feel the subtle work beneath the surface? How is this season building deeper roots in your faith? What is God revealing to you about perseverance, about true dependence on Him, about the strength found not in striving, but in hoping? Allow His truth to anchor you, even when the surface shows little sign of growth. The silence settles around you, thick and heavy, much like the dust that coated the sandals of the Israelites. You stand in a place you didn't expect to be, a landscape bare and disorienting, with no clear map or even a distant landmark promising relief. This is the wilderness, not necessarily a physical desert, but a season of waiting that feels vast, desolate, and unending. It wasn't the path you envisioned, the speedy route to the promised land you prayed for. Yet, here you are, wandering, questioning the journey's purpose and the guide's plan. Just like them, rescued from the chains of Egypt, you too were set free from something, only to find the journey through the wilderness far more challenging than the escape from bondage. They expected milk and honey immediately, a straight shot to abundance. God had a different lesson in mind. 40 years they walked, not because God was lost, but because they were. Lost in their doubt, lost in their ingrained patterns of reliance on what was seen, tasted, and controlled. He stripped away their memory of Egypt's leeks and onions, their dependence on Pharaoh's structure, and taught them hunger so they could learn the taste of heavenly bread. He let their thirst become unbearable before water gushed from a rock. This wilderness was their classroom, the curriculum tough but essential. God wasn't withholding, He was revealing. He revealed their grumbling hearts, quick to complain about discomfort, instead of remembering His mighty hand that parted the sea. But He also revealed His unwavering faithfulness, His daily, miraculous provision, side by side with their human frailty. This desolate landscape became the stage for divine intimacy, where manna appeared each morning like dew, teaching them to trust Him for today's needs, not stockpile for tomorrow's fears. Maybe you're there now. The waiting season feels like a wilderness. The prayer you whisper seems to echo in a void. You are desperate for direction, for a sign, for the path forward. You feel stripped bare, perhaps of resources, of relationships, of certainty, of the very things you thought were your security. It's in this raw, exposed state that God does His deepest work. He is emptying your hands of everything you trusted besides Him, not to leave you empty, but to fill them with Himself. He is teaching you that true provision comes not from finding your way, but from His presence guiding each step. Remember the words echoed across the plains, a lesson for those who had walked it. Remember how the Lord your God led you all the way in the wilderness, these 40 years, to humble and test you, in order to know what was in your heart, whether or not you would keep His commands. Deuteronomy 8:2. The wilderness isn't designed to break you, but to humble you, not to punish, but to test and refine. It's a season where abundance is found not in having more, but in needing only Him. It's a profound paradox. The less you have to hold on to, the more tightly you can grip the hand of God. What is God stripping away in your wilderness? What is He teaching you about true reliance for your daily bread, your emotional strength, your spiritual sustenance? Look not at the harsh terrain, but at the hand that holds you through it. The waiting aches in your bones today. It's not just patience you need, it's endurance. You trace the lines on your palm, seeing a life laid out differently than you planned. Maybe you feel forgotten, overlooked, like a seed buried so deep the sun feels impossibly far away. This season feels less like a gentle pause and more like a harsh wilderness, each step forward met with unexpected thorns. The dream you once held close feels like a whisper from a distant country, fading with each passing year of unanswered questions and unexpected detours. How long, Lord? The question echoes in the silent spaces of your heart. Consider Joseph, a young man, vibrant with the favor of God, dreams painted across the night sky, sheaves bowing, stars descending. He saw the palace in his sleep, but waking life offered a pit. His own brothers, the faces he knew and loved, tore the coat of promise from his back and cast him into darkness. Sold into slavery, traded like chattel, he found himself in a foreign land, far from family, far from the familiar comfort of home. Yet, even as his life seemed to unravel, the ancient scripture whispers, "The Lord was with Joseph." Genesis 39:2. Even in the pit, even on the auction block, even in the mundane duties of Potiphar's house. Then, another blow. Loyalty repaid with betrayal. Virtue met with false accusation. The chains of slavery replaced by the walls of a prison cell. 13 years stretched out, each day a testament to the cruel irony of his situation. A man with a divine destiny locked away in obscurity. Every setback seemed designed to extinguish the dream, to prove it was nothing but youthful fantasy. Yet, the narrative remains steadfast. The Lord was with Joseph. Genesis 39:21, 39:23. God was not absent from the suffering. He was present within it. This is the profound, counterintuitive truth of God's timing. His purposes are often woven not despite the delays and the pain, but through them. The pit was not an obstacle to the palace. It was part of the pathway. Slavery was not a diversion. It was preparation for stewardship. Prison was not punishment. It was a classroom for leadership and wisdom. God wasn't just waiting for Joseph to get through the hardship. He was working in the hardship, shaping the shepherd boy into a statesman, refining his character in the furnace of affliction. He was learning reliance on God in ways he never could have in comfort. Perhaps your current struggle, your wilderness wandering, your feeling of being trapped in a pit or a prison of circumstances is not a sign that God has abandoned you, but that He is uniquely with you in this difficult place. He is using the delay, the injustice, the pain, for a purpose you cannot yet perceive. Just as Joseph could look back from the height of his authority and declare, "You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good." Genesis 50:20. You too can trust that God is capable of redeeming your deepest hurts and most unfair delays. He is not wasting your waiting. He is refining you within it, positioning you for something far grander, far more redemptive than you could ever orchestrate yourself. Can you trust that His presence is enough, even when the palace is nowhere in sight and the pit feels like your permanent address? He is with you now, just as He was with Joseph. You had it all planned. A date circled on the calendar, a clear vision of how the pieces would fall into place. A whisper of expectation directed heavenward. You prayed for a door to open by then, for a healing to manifest on this day, for a relationship to mend before the season changed. You held this timeline close, nurturing it, believing it was aligned with faith, perhaps even convinced it was God's plan because it felt so right, so necessary, so urgent. But the date came and went. The door remained shut. The healing tarried. The relationship stayed fractured. And in the quiet aftermath of your unmet expectation, a subtle tension begins to build. A friction between your carefully constructed timeline and the apparent stillness of God's. It feels like resistance, doesn't it? Like trying to push a mighty river upstream with your bare hands. You replay the prayers, you search for the missteps, you wonder where the disconnect lies between your earnest faith and this unmoving reality. This internal struggle is the birthplace of profound frustration, maybe even quiet doubt, the feeling that God isn't just saying no or wait, but that He's operating on an entirely different clock, one you can neither see nor understand. This is where the profound, often painful work of surrender truly begins. Not a passive shrug of resignation, giving up because you're exhausted, but an active, costly choice. Surrender is the decision to loosen your white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel of your life's narrative, specifically the timing, and place your hands in the hands of the One who drew constellations and charted the oceans. It's an alignment of wills, yes, but crucially, an alignment of timelines. It's the courageous whisper, God, my plan made sense to me. My timing felt perfect, but I choose to trust, my Father. If it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Matthew 26:39. He had a timeline he wished for, a suffering he hoped to avoid, in that way, at that moment. This wasn't a lack of faith. It was an honest, vulnerable struggle of the human will wrestling with the divine. Yet, he immediately followed with the ultimate act of surrendered trust. Nevertheless, not as I will, but as you will. Matthew 26:39. Later, Luke records a similar heart-wrenching prayer. Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. Luke 22:42. This wasn't easy. This wasn't a casual agreement. It was sweat like drops of blood. Luke 22:44. A battle fought on his knees in the olive grove under a heavy sky. It shows us that surrendering our timeline isn't a smooth, effortless glide into peace. It is often a gritty, painful fight against our own deeply held desires, fears, and sense of control. But it was precisely this surrender, this agonizing alignment of his human timeline with the Father's divine one, that paved the way for the fulfillment of God's perfect plan. A plan that involved ultimate suffering, yes, but led to ultimate redemption and victory over death. The spiritual insight here is profound, a gentle, poetic paradox. True freedom in the waiting season comes not from seizing control of the clock, but from releasing it. Peace is found not in manipulating outcomes to fit your schedule, but in trusting the wisdom of the One who orchestrated sunrises and sunsets before time even began. Your grip on control doesn't create security, it creates tension. Surrendering your timeline isn't passive resignation. It is active, courageous trust in the sovereignty and perfect love of God. It is saying, "My plan might be good, Lord, but yours is perfect. My timing feels urgent, Lord, but yours is eternal and wise." It's leaning back into the arms of the shepherd when you can't see the path ahead, trusting he knows the terrain and the appointed time to reach the destination. This surrender transforms the agonizing wait into a sacred space. It allows God to work in ways you couldn't have orchestrated, to open doors you didn't even see, to bring about growth in you that only the wilderness season, prolonged beyond your schedule, could cultivate. It teaches patience, resilience, and a deeper reliance on Him. It chips away at the idol of control we often unknowingly worship. It forces us to confront the underlying anxiety that perhaps God's timing isn't best or that He might miss our opportunity. But His promises stand firm against these fears. He is never late. He is always working, even when the clock in your hand feels stalled. So, quiet your heart for a moment. What timelines are you clutching onto right now? Is it a career milestone, a relationship status, a healing date, a financial breakthrough, a dream deferred? What expectations about when things should happen are causing tension in your soul? How can you, in the midst of that tension, practice echoing Jesus' prayer in Gethsemane? It might not feel easy. It might be a wrestle, but choose to trust His perfect timing over your own. Choose to surrender the clock. The calendar pages turn, marking time, but the answer hasn't arrived. You sit in the silence, wondering if your prayer was even heard, if the divine signal somehow missed your heart's desperate plea. The what-ifs gather like storm clouds on the horizon of your mind, whispering doubts about the future, painting scenarios of disappointment. It's easy, isn't it? To postpone peace, to tell yourself, "I'll finally exhale, truly feel okay when this season ends, when the answer comes, when X finally happens." The waiting itself becomes a wilderness, a place where joy feels distant and rest feels forbidden, until you reach the promised land on the other side of your circumstance. You feel caught in the current, tossed by anxieties you can barely name. But listen closely. Feel the gentle tap, like rain on a window pane, like God's whisper inviting you to stillness, right here, right now. He doesn't ask you to white-knuckle your way through the waiting, holding your breath until the outcome appears. He invites you into a deeper truth. His peace isn't the reward after the storm, but the divine anchor in the storm. It's not the absence of trouble or delay. It's the unmistakable presence of the Holy Spirit guarding your heart and mind. Philippians 4:6-7 stands like a lighthouse in the midst of anxiety. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, present your requests to God. And the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. This isn't a magic formula to speed up God's timing or manipulate the outcome. It's a radical invitation to trade your heavy cloak of worry for the light garment of divine peace, not when you arrive at your destination, but while you are still on the journey. The mystery. Peace isn't always the feeling of calm waters. Sometimes it's the quiet confidence of knowing the architect of the seas is in the boat with you, even when the waves crash high. You don't need perfect clarity to find peace, because peace comes from a person, not a prediction. It's a surrender that unlocks a freedom the striving soul can never find. This peace transcends understanding, because it defies logic. How can you feel guarded when the threat still looms? How can your mind be at rest when the future is uncertain? This is the miraculous work of God's presence within you, like an oil lamp steadily burning in the darkest valley, pushing back the shadows of fear. It doesn't make the waiting disappear, but it transforms the experience of waiting. Think about your specific what-ifs, the anxious questions swirling within you about this season of waiting. Can you name them? Can you gather them like stones in your hand and intentionally, with prayer and petition, lay them at the foot of the cross today? And here's the sacred twist. Can you choose thanksgiving for what you do have? For the mercies that are new each morning? For the simple gift of breath, even as you voice your requests? This act isn't denial, it's declaration. It's declaring that God is good, regardless of your circumstance. It's inviting His peace, the peace that makes no earthly sense, to actively stand guard over your heart and your mind, securing you in the truth that you are held, seen, and loved, even in the pause. Will you dare to trade the weight of worry for the wonder of His peace, right now, exactly where you are? You felt the weight of the calendar pages turning, each day blurring into the next, the silence amplifying the questions in your heart. You prayed, you believed, you waited, and still, the landscape around you looks unchanged, barren even. In these moments, the whispers begin, insidious, subtle, like sand shifting underfoot. Did God really say that? Was that promise truly for me, or just a hopeful phrase from a different time, a different life? It's in the long, arduous wait that the promises of God feel most distant, most fragile. They can seem like mirages in the desert, shimmering with hope but dissolving upon approach. Think of the children of Israel, freed by a thunderous display of power, walking through the parted sea. Yet years later, facing thirst or hunger in the wilderness, they forgot the miracle-working God who led them. The immediate challenge, the pressing need, eclipsed the vastness of His power and the certainty of His promise to bring them to a land flowing with milk and honey. Their present struggle made the future promise seem impossible, even irrelevant. It's a struggle we understand, isn't it? When your own wilderness is parched and long, how do you remember the river He promised? Yet the truth stands like an unmovable mountain peak. God's character is faithfulness. He is not a human being, prone to forgetting, lying, or changing His mind with the shifting winds of circumstance. Numbers 23:19. His promises are not contingent on our feelings or the fluctuating state of the world. They are rooted in His eternal, unchanging nature. While you may feel consumed by the waiting, overlooked by time, His compassions never fail. They are new every morning, a fresh sunrise of His steadfast love painting the sky of your soul, even before you feel its warmth. The Book of Lamentations is a testament to this. Written from the depths of loss and suffering, so profound it felt like the end, hope was found by focusing on the very character of God. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for His compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is good to those whose hope is in Him, to the one who seeks Him. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord. Lamentations 3:22-26. Hope wasn't conjured from thin air. It was discovered anchored in the unshakable faithfulness of God Himself, even when everything else had fallen apart. The spiritual insight is profound. Anchoring yourself in God's unwavering promises isn't just a nice idea. It is the essential fuel for the long journey of waiting. It's the living water that sustains you in the desert, the gentle light illuminating the path through the valley. Sometimes, the greatest strength isn't found in the fulfillment of the promise yet, but in the quiet, tenacious grip on the character of the one who promised. It is good to wait quietly for the salvation of the Lord, not because the waiting is easy, but because the one you wait for is eternally good. So lean into this truth. Let it settle deep within your spirit. Your call to reflection today is quiet but powerful. Which specific promises from Scripture resonate most deeply with the challenges and fears you are facing right now? Are they promises of peace, provision, strength, presence, restoration, or breakthrough? How can you intentionally meditate on those promises daily? Perhaps writing them down, speaking them aloud, visualizing them meeting your present need, allowing His proven faithfulness, not your fleeting feelings, to strengthen your resolve to wait with hope, trusting that He who promised is faithful to perform it. Let His word breathe His faithfulness into your wait. The clock ticks, a relentless, finite rhythm echoing the impatience in your soul. You stand at a standstill, a barrier looming large. And from here, from this human vantage point, tethered to fleeting moments, the waiting feels like a thief. It steals time, energy, opportunity. It shrinks your world down to the present discomfort, the raw edge of what isn't happening yet. You focus on the delay, the unanswered prayer, the stalled dream, the empty space where provision should be. This finite perspective screams of stagnation, of potential wasted, of a life story paused indefinitely. But lift your gaze, just slightly, beyond the ticking clock, beyond the barrier that fills your immediate view, stretches an infinite horizon. God operates on a timeline so vast, so magnificent, it dwarfs our earthly years into mere brushstrokes on an eternal canvas. What feels like a lengthy, pointless delay in your small, personal narrative is in His hands a crucial, necessary moment within a grander, redemptive story, one that encompasses not only your future, but the very unfolding of His eternal purpose. Consider the Apostle Paul, battered by trials, confined by walls, enduring weights that seemed insurmountable from a human view. Yet, he could declare, not in naive optimism, but in profound spiritual sight, "For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes, not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." 2 Corinthians 4:17-18. Here lies a tender paradox. The heaviest burdens, when held in the eternal scale, are rendered light. The longest weights, measured against forever, are but a moment. This spiritual insight is a lifeline in the wilderness of waiting. It whispers that this season, this difficult pause, is not a void to be endured before real life begins again. It is real life, a sacred chapter where unseen eternal work is being forged within you. The patience you gain, the resilience you build, the deeper dependence on God you discover, these are not temporary fixes for a temporal problem. They are eternal weights of glory being prepared in and for you. You are being shaped, refined, and readied for a purpose that stretches far beyond the outcome you currently long for. The seed underground isn't dormant. It's gathering strength for an unseen bloom. Your call to reflection today asks you to consciously shift your gaze. What would it look like to view this waiting not as a punishment or a pause, but as a deliberate, essential part of an eternal formation? How does believing that God is weaving something unseen and eternal right now change the weight of the temporary discomfort? Lean into the truth that while the seen world screams delay, the unseen reality whispers preparation. Trust that the author of eternity is writing a story in you far more profound than you can currently perceive. And this waiting season holds a glorious, eternal weight. You feel it, don't you? That persistent sense of being incomplete, like a house under interminable construction. The noise isn't the hopeful sound of progress, but the grating echo of disruption. Dust settles on everything, on your hopes, on your plans, on the dreams you thought would be finished by now. From the outside, perhaps even from within, it doesn't look like much is happening. Just mess, just delay. You ache for the final product, the polished, finished home. You whisper, or perhaps shout into the quiet, "God, why the wait? Why aren't you finished with me yet?" This feeling of being unfinished business, stuck in a season of waiting that stretches on and on, is a wilderness you navigate often. You look at the scattered pieces, the exposed beams, the lack of walls where walls should be, and doubt creeps in like damp rot. Has God forgotten the blueprint? Has He lost interest in the project that is your life? But step closer. Look past the superficial mess. The divine truth is profound. God is not just building for you. He is meticulously, painstakingly, lovingly building in you. He is not an indifferent contractor who abandoned the site. He is the master carpenter, and you are His most cherished project. Every season of waiting, every period of feeling unfinished, is an essential phase in His construction. The waiting isn't empty delay. It might be the crucial drying time for a foundation that needs to withstand future storms. It could be the quiet, complex process of joining disparate pieces together with precision, creating joints that hold firm under pressure, the kind of strength you only gain in the stillness. Or perhaps it's the setting time for paint, a seemingly inactive stage that allows the protective layers to cure completely, preparing the surface for whatever comes next. You, with your limited view, see only the visible mess, the frustrating slowness, the lack of instant transformation. But He holds the blueprint, the grand design, the vision of the finished masterpiece. He sees the purpose behind every nail, every cut, every moment of sanding that feels like painful abrasion. He is too skilled, too wise, and infinitely too loving to rush the job or leave it incomplete. This spiritual insight is a lifeline in the construction zone of your soul. God's work in your life is an intricate, deliberate process, and the waiting is not an interruption. It is an integral, non-negotiable part of the construction phase. You might feel broken down, but He is breaking ground. You might feel like rubble, but He is laying a foundation. The silence you perceive might not be God's absence, but the focused quiet needed for intricate work. He is shaping you, sanding off rough edges you didn't know you had, joining parts of your story and personality that felt separate. Sometimes, strength is built not in the doing, but in the waiting, not in the rushing forward, but in the patient allowing of the divine process. It's a paradox of faith. You are most actively being built when you feel most passively unfinished. He isn't just constructing your external circumstances. He is building the internal structure of your character, your resilience, your capacity for His love and purpose. And so, a quiet call to reflection settles upon the dust and disruption. Can you trust the hands of the master carpenter working in your life? Can you look at the unfinished work, the visible mess, the agonizing delays, and still rest in the profound assurance that He is building something beautiful, something strong, something perfectly aligned with His eternal design? It requires a shift in perspective, from focusing on the temporary discomfort of the building site to contemplating the glorious vision held in the mind of the architect. It means surrendering your timeline for His. It means believing that the dust and noise are not signs of abandonment, but sounds of creation. Can you find peace not despite the unfinishedness, but within the process, knowing that every moment is purposeful under His hand? He sees the completed structure, the home where peace resides, where joy echoes, where purpose stands firm, and He is diligently, lovingly working towards it, one prayer, one patient day, one carefully placed piece at a time. The waiting feels endless. You sit in the silence, the clock a loud, mocking presence on the wall. You've prayed, you've wept, you've poured out your heart over the longing, the need, the unspoken ache for breakthrough. Each sunrise that brings no change feels like a quiet denial. Each setback a confirmation that perhaps your prayer wasn't truly heard, or perhaps wasn't worthy. The world keeps spinning. Lives around you seem to progress, while yours feels stalled in a barren wilderness of delay. This place is fertile ground for doubt, a valley where anxiety whispers insidious questions. Has God forgotten? Is this His answer? Just perpetual waiting? This is where perhaps the hardest truth takes root, demanding not just intellectual assent, but profound, soul-deep trust. God's timing is perfect. Not perfect according to the urgent pulse of your fears, not perfect measured by the ticking clock of your desires, but perfect according to His infinite wisdom. He sees the tapestry from end to end, knows the readiness of your heart, and the precise alignment of circumstances needed to bring about the outcome that will yield the greatest glory to Him and the most enduring good for you. Our perceived delay is simply the divine weaving of His intricate, flawless schedule. The ancient prophet Habakkuk wrestled with waiting, with perceived injustice and silence, and received a word for such a time. Habakkuk 2:3 declares, "For the vision is yet for the appointed time. It hastens toward the goal, and it will not fail. Though it tarries, wait for it will certainly come, it will not delay." Read those words again. Let them breathe into the tight spaces of your waiting heart. The vision, God's promise, His plan, is for an appointed time. It is hastening, moving towards its goal. It will not fail. And crucially, though it tarries to our limited sight, it will certainly come, and it will not delay beyond its perfect moment. This is a gentle paradox. The delay you feel isn't a delay in God's plan, but simply the unfolding of it in a time you cannot yet comprehend. The spiritual insight here is profound, releasing our frantic need to understand why the timing is His allows us to simply trust that it is good. We trade the heavy burden of figuring it out for the light yoke of surrender. We don't need a roadmap to trust the guide. Sometimes, the waiting isn't about God being slow. It's about Him preparing the ground, shaping the vessel, and orchestrating the perfect moment for the seed to break through the soil. In this moment, standing in the perceived delay, can you actively affirm God's perfect timing? even when circumstances scream failure, even when anxiety grips your chest like a vice. Can you speak the truth of Habakkuk 2 verse 3 over your situation, declaring, "Though it tarries to me, it will certainly come in his perfect time. It will not delay." Can you choose, in the quiet strength of faith, to wait with patient expectation, trusting the author of time itself? This surrender isn't passive resignation. It is active, courageous trust. The calendar pages turn, each day a quiet echo of the one before, and still, the tangible evidence you long for remains hidden. You scan the horizon of your circumstances, searching for a sign, a glimmer, anything that says, "Yes, this is moving. Yes, God heard." But the view is the same, waiting. This isn't the easy part of faith. This is the stretch of wilderness where water isn't seen, only desperately believed to be there, just over the next dune. It's easy to muster hope when the answer feels close, when the doctor gives a good prognosis, when the job offer is in hand, when reconciliation whispers just outside the door. But what about when the report is grim, the silence deafening, the distance growing? What then? This is where the flimsy, fingers-crossed kind of hope dissolves like mist in the sun. This is where a different kind of hope is forged, a deep, abiding assurance rooted not in what you see or feel, but in who God is. This is the unseen hope. It's the quiet confidence that God is good, irrevocably good, even when the news is bad. It's the conviction that He is working, actively, orchestrating moments behind the curtain of the visible world, even when everything around you feels stagnant or is crumbling. It's the unshakable belief that His promises will prevail, not because you conjured them into being with enough faith, but because they are anchored in His eternal, unchanging character. This is the hope that doesn't demand proof up front. It trusts the source of the promise. It looks at the impossibility of the situation and remembers the God of the impossible. It acknowledges the darkness and knows that the light is coming because He promised it would. This unseen hope is what sustains you through the long stretches. It's the oil that keeps the lamp burning during the night, the quiet strength that allows you to take another step when weariness begs you to stop. It's the conviction that fuels perseverance. The writer of Hebrews knew this deep well of waiting. They had tasted opposition, faced potential loss, and understood the spiritual fatigue that can set in. They offer not a platitude, but a powerful reminder. So do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded. You need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He has promised. Hebrews 10:35 through 36. See the connection? Perseverance isn't just gritting your teeth and pushing through. It's the active posture of doing the will of God while you wait for the promise. And what fuels that doing? What keeps you from throwing away your confidence when the reward feels impossibly far off? Unseen hope. The hope that knows the reward is coming because God said so. The perseverance isn't earning the promise. It's the response of a heart that trusts the promiser, even in the dark. It's a quiet paradox. You are most strong when your strength is simply holding on to Him. You gain clarity by trusting the path you cannot see. This unseen hope is not a passive feeling. It is an active posture of the heart. It's a decision made moment by moment to look beyond the present difficulty, beyond the disappointing email, the negative test result, the strained relationship, the unanswered prayer, and to fix your gaze on the promised future, anchored in the trustworthy nature of God. It is consciously choosing to nourish this confidence, like tending a fragile seedling in harsh conditions. It involves feeding your heart with His truth when fear whispers lies. It means reminding yourself of His past faithfulness when doubt clouds your vision. It requires speaking His promises over your situation, even when the words feel like they bounce off a ceiling. It is finding strength not in the changing tides of your circumstances, but in the unchanging character of the one who holds the oceans in His hand. How do you actively cultivate this unseen hope in your heart today? Is it carving out 5 minutes to deliberately thank God for a promise He will keep, even though you don't see it yet? Is it choosing to serve someone else, focusing outward rather than inward on your waiting? Is it opening His Word specifically to find scriptures about hope, about perseverance, about His faithfulness in unseen places? How can you nourish this quiet, deep confidence in God's character and promises? What small, intentional act can you take today to water that seedling of hope, allowing it to draw strength from the deep roots of His truth? Let this unseen confidence be the strength that carries you through the waiting, anchoring your soul in the certainty of His coming fulfillment, even when the shore is far beyond sight. You stand at the edge of what feels like a vast, empty plain, the dust of countless days settling around your feet. The horizon stretches endlessly, devoid of the landmark you've been straining your eyes to see, the sign you've been begging God to send. You've waited through seasons, through trials, through quiet nights, whispering the same desperate prayer. The waiting becomes a wilderness, beautiful in its starkness sometimes, but mostly just long. It presses in, whispering doubts, making the heart heavy with the fear that perhaps, just perhaps, this is the end of the road, the final stop before the destination was ever reached. But the truth, a truth whispered by the wind that sometimes rustles the dry grass of that plain, is that even the longest wilderness has a boundary. The journey of waiting, no matter how arduous, how filled with unanswered questions and silent stretches, does have an end. There comes a time, marked not by your calendar, but by the divine clockwork of the universe, when God declares the season over. It's His perfect season, the Kairos moment, where the door doesn't just creak open, but swings wide. The previously obscured path becomes clear under a sudden, brilliant light. The answer, perhaps long yearned for, arrives not as a gentle dewfall, but sometimes like a rushing river breaking through a dam. It might unfold gradually, like dawn painting the sky, or it might happen in an instant, a startling intervention that takes your breath away. Think of the Israelites, 40 years circling in the wilderness, facing giants and fortified cities, their promised land just across a seemingly impassable river. 40 years of waiting, of learning dependency, of shedding the old ways. Yet, the Jordan wasn't their tomb. It was their threshold. They crossed. Breakthrough came. Or consider Peter, chained in a prison cell, hours from execution, while the church gathered, praying earnestly. The night before he was to die, an angel entered the locked room. Chains fell, gates opened. A sudden, undeniable, miraculous release. His waiting, his impending death turned into a testimony of divine intervention. These stories echo across time, powerful reminders that God's delays are never denials. The waiting season is not a permanent roadblock designed to frustrate you eternally. It is a passage, a necessary unfolding within His larger narrative for your life. And when the breakthrough arrives, it often comes in a way that makes His hand unmistakable. impossible to ignore. Suddenly, the reason for the wait begins to crystallize, making the long stretches of uncertainty understandable in retrospect. You realize your waiting had a divine deadline, a sacred appointment known only to Him. God is utterly faithful to bring His promises to pass, not just someday, but in His appointed, perfect time. And here lies a quiet paradox. The very things He has been building in you during the wait, resilience, deeper trust, perhaps new skills or perspectives, are precisely what you will need when the breakthrough arrives. The emptying in the wilderness was preparation for the abundance of the promised land. The stillness before release wasn't abandonment, but the loading of divine power into the moment of freedom. Hold on to this assurance. Your waiting is not in vain. You are not forgotten on that plane. Breakthrough is coming, perfectly timed by the one who holds every season in His hands. As you feel the final stretches of the wait, the temptation to grow weary, to slump in defeat, might be strongest. How can you resist this gravitational pull? How can you maintain a posture of readiness, of active expectation, even when the horizon is still hazy, trusting that He who began this good work in you during the wait is faithful to complete it? Not just the work in you, but the promise for you. Lean into the quiet certainty that the author of your story knows the perfect moment for the page to turn, for the next chapter of breakthrough to begin. You reach the end of this moment, this reflection, perhaps feeling the echo of the waiting, the stillness that often feels like absence. You sat with the ache, the unanswered questions, like persistent rain against a window pane. The frustration of closed doors wasn't just about convenience. It was about feeling forgotten, unseen in your struggle. You surrendered your timeline, not with joyous freedom, but sometimes with a weary sigh, wondering if your dreams were even on God's map. Yet look back. Even in the quietest stretches, woven through the fabric of every moment of waiting, God was there. He wasn't loud or dramatic in the way you might have hoped. He taught you a dependence you didn't know you needed. Showing you the weakness you tried to hide was the very place His strength could rest. He was refining your character, burning away the dross like a refiner's fire, leaving behind something purer, stronger, more resilient. And in the crucible of the wait, He drew you closer to His heart than you might have imagined possible in the ease of answered prayers. The waiting wasn't His absence, it was His intimate, quiet presence, shaping you in ways you couldn't see until the light finally broke through. You learned that trust isn't about having a clear map for every step, seeing the destination, or even understanding the winding path. Trust is about holding onto the hand of the one who holds the map, the one who is the destination, the one who walks the path with you, even when it leads through a wilderness season where you can't see the stars. You discovered that peace isn't the absence of waiting, the moment the struggle ends and the victory arrives. Peace is the inexplicable, steady presence of God in the waiting, a quiet anchor dropped into the storm within your soul. And the hardest lesson, perhaps, God's timing isn't delayed. It's not late because it doesn't align with yours. It's simply perfect. He is the master carpenter, and every nail, every cut, every moment of planning the structure is part of a masterpiece being built. He is working all things together, the quiet, the loud, the seen, the unseen, the sorrow, the joy, all for your ultimate good and His eternal glory. Even now, as you continue to navigate whatever you are waiting for, know this truth deep in your bones. You are not alone. The master carpenter is still at work. His tools are precise. His vision is perfect. The one who promised you faithfulness, who pledged his unwavering love, is still faithful. His promises are not subject to the calendar or the clock. They are as sure and steadfast as his throne. And in the quiet moments, when the world is loud with striving and demanding and questioning, you can tune your heart, like tuning an instrument, to hear his voice. He is not silent. He is singing a quiet song over you. It's a song of love that sees past every flaw, a song of acceptance that embraces every part of your journey, a song of purpose that whispers your name into the grand narrative of his plan. You are seen, truly seen, not for what you achieve or what you have endured, but for who you are in him. You are heard. Every whispered prayer, every silent cry, every heart's longing, you are loved with an unchanging, unending love that is the very foundation of the universe. Rest in that truth. Lay down the burden of needing to understand it all. Trust his heart, his good and perfect nature. Trust his timing, the divine rhythm of grace unfolding. Trust his unwavering presence, the promise that he will never leave you nor forsake you. The waiting may continue for a season, like the hidden life beneath winter's frost, but so does his faithfulness. It is the steady, constant rhythm beneath the surface of your life, guiding you, holding you secure, loving you always. Even in the deepest silence, his presence sings over you. They didn't see the full picture, but they trusted the artist, and that was enough.